Sure. Okay, so today our training topic deals with customizing inspection windows. And we're going to be dealing with several different areas where you can do those customizations in order to speed up your life and make the process of doing inspections or being notified of upcoming inspections or scheduled inspections a lot simpler. We are going to be talking a fair bit today about how to use default searches and what we call list templates in FirePro. So I'm going to briefly go over those again at the beginning, just so we get a quick refresher on how those work. Then we're going to be talking about using the property list window. Primarily, that's going to be for keeping yourself notified of scheduled inspections. We'll also briefly touch on how to do custom reminders for specific properties if you wanted to do something like an annual fire alarm drill or something like that with a particular address. We are then going to move on to the inspection list window, where again, I'm going to show you how to customize that window and how to set up default searches that will show you all of your current ongoing inspections, as opposed to just looking at a master list of inspections. We'll also talk a little bit about how to customize reminders for your inspections, and then customizing your own officer information when you're doing inspections as well. So that's going to be things like putting in custom signatures and other information like that. So yeah, full plate today. We'll be going over a fair number of things, but like I said, that is all going to be available on the website as we go along. So if you have questions or anything like that, I am going to be keeping the chat open. So pop any questions you might have in the chat. And then depending on time, we're going to do a question and answer period at the end. So, if there's some specific things you want me to touch on, we can do that. So to start off with, when we are working in any of the modules in FirePro, there's a couple of tools which are standard features of those modules that are really, really helpful, especially in the context of inspections. So those tools are what we call saved searches, and also what we call list templates. So the saved searches allow you to take a bunch of the search functions in this window and save it as a prepackaged search, either something that you can run later anytime you want to, or something that you can set as the default for this window, which means that that search will get run automatically anytime you come in. The template is designed to manage how this list section, which displays all the information, functions. So the template contains things like the various different columns that are displayed, the way those columns are sorted, and the width of the columns. And again, you can have multiple different templates which show you different information about your addresses, but you can also set default templates for your user profile, which will attach things, just display them directly the way you want. So a lot of the time when we talk through things today, I'm going to be assuming that you're going to want to set up defaults, but you want to remember that you can absolutely just have multiple different templates and use them as necessary. So to start off with, what I want to talk about is the property list window. When we're dealing with inspections, properties and inspections are very closely interlinked. They're not really separatable in the sense that properties are where you do all your scheduling of your regularly recurring inspections, and also where you're going to contain a lot of information related to the property address and the inspection stuff in general. So when I look at an individual property record in FirePro, there's a fair bit of information that is going to relate to inspections that is attached to it. Property name frequently, certainly in the contact side of things, property owners, for example, are going to be an important piece. We're just going to put in Bob Smith here because Bob Smith owns a ton of stuff everywhere. So property owner information. And then on the inspections tab, we're going to see things like building code classification, and periodic inspection scheduling. So periodic inspection scheduling is where we identify where we've last done inspections and how frequently we want these inspections to happen. This is going to allow us to set up things like when is the next inspection due for this property. And if we want, we can even set what we call default inspectors. We can also do default squads or platoons for these properties if we want to do that, depending on how you have your inspections organized. Now, this periodic inspection information is really important from you as an inspector's perspective, because that's giving you that notification of when are these inspections due, and when do I have to make sure that these things get underway. So in order to customize the property list window to do that most effectively for you, I normally deal with a combination of a saved search function and a preset list template. So most of the saved search functions that we're dealing with in this context are in the property list window. Under the property tab, there's a tab called inspection. And this contains a bunch of search parameters which apply directly to the inspection information as it pertains to the property. So we can see right up at the top, it says enter the date range for inspections due. In this case, I would say something like, show me anything that has an inspection due this year on it. I can also search for properties that are assigned to a specific inspector if I want to, and to a specific platoon. There are also a number of custom checkboxes on the inspections tab. They don't appear automatically, but you can turn them on. They appear in this area. And these can be used to further clarify information about the property from an inspection search perspective. So it might be something like has lockbox or vulnerable occupancy or something like that. And I'm going to show you in a sec where you can turn those sort of things on. But you can also use those search parameters if you want to. So in this case, if I hit the magnifying glass here, I'm going to get a list of all my properties that have a inspection due date for this year. So what I like to do personally is save that search and potentially set it as a default for my user profile. So if I want to save the search, all I have to do is put in the date range. And if I want to include inspector in that search, I can, but I like to just do this year for inspections due. If you're looking for a shorter time period, you could do something like this quarter or this month as your search. If you use these automated search options in the system, FirePro will automatically keep those schedules up to date for you when you run this in the future. So that would allow me to do things like, say, this month, and then it'll automatically switch over when I move to November, for example. But in this case, I've got the search run the way I want it. I can hit the magnifying glass to actually run the search, and then I want to save the search using the Save Search option here. So the green plus button in this Save Search option is going to allow me to save a new search, and I'm going to call it something like Inspections This Year or something like that, just so it's pretty clear what it is. And then I can use the green plus button, or the green checkbox to save that. Once I have that search saved, I can come back and run it anytime I want to. So I could come back into the properties module at some point in the future and just quickly run that Inspections This Year search, which would automatically search for those properties. But a lot of the time, what I like to do is set it up as my default. So this would attach it to your own user profile. So if I right click anywhere in the green here, I can select Set Default Search. And that's going to mean that when I come into the property record, the default search will get run automatically. It's going to run my inspections this year by default. Now, this shows me every property in my FirePro system that has an inspection scheduled on it for this year. But if I look down at the bottom, that information isn't clearly visible in the template that I have selected. So usually I like to modify these templates so that they meet my requirements for showing me the information that I want regarding the addresses that need an inspection. What I'm going to do right now is maximize this window and then use this blue button in the top right-hand corner to hide all the search functions here. So once I hide those search functions, I can just work with the list itself. Now, when I'm working with a template, I have several different options about things that I can do. The first one is that on these column headers at the very top, you can see how they highlight when I hover my mouse over them. If I right-click on those column headers, I will get a list of other information that I can display about these property records. And this is often where I'm going to be getting into inspection-related stuff. So I can do things like select the inspection due date. And what I might decide is I'm going to left-click and drag to move that around. I'm going to drag it over first thing, and I can right-click again and do last inspection date, for example. So I could put that on there. I also have a last inspection status, which is going to show me the current status of the last inspection on that property. That might be useful in some contexts. Likewise, I might elect to not see roll folio number, but I may want to right-click and say, I would like to see the primary owner, and potentially I could even do the primary owner phone number, for example. So I can have a variety of different columns. I can drag those columns around, and I can also adjust the width on them to get them looking the way that I want on this window. I can also left-click on any of these column headers to resort the results based on that column. So for example, personally, I like it when my most recent stuff is at the top, working down to older stuff, but it's also fine to do it the other way. You can see there's a little arrow here that shows you what direction the sort is built in. So if you sort by that column, it's going to sort all your results by the system. So if I now close this window, it'll reset to whatever I was at before. So what I might want to do is I can either right-click anywhere on the blue and use the option called Save as My List template to update your own user profile to use just this template by default. Or in the template section at the bottom, I can use the green plus button and create a new template and call it something like inspections. Once I've saved that template, I can come back into the property list window anytime I want and toggle for my inspections template, which again shows me exactly what I had set up there before. And if I want to do that, I can right-click and say Save Inspections as my list template, which means that when I come into the properties module, I get the inspections template and the inspection search set up automatically for me so that I see my currently scheduled inspections with the information about them that I want, organized in the way that I want them. So using these inspection search functions as a saved search and then setting yourself up a custom template on this window can be really helpful. And reviewing the sort of different columns that we have on here, often things like, we have a number of inspection related columns available for information that can include things like the inspection due date, the last inspection date, the property name, the name of the assigned inspector, if you wanted to do that. There's a fair range. You could do the inspection frequency, how frequently this inspection is supposed to happen. So there's a lot of information that you can display on the template for the property that helps you out in identifying what properties you have that have scheduled inspections on them. Now, again, if you do have questions, you can put that in the chat. Alternatively, we are going to be reviewing stuff at the end. So that kind of deals with how to do some of the standard customization on properties. It's also a good idea, generally speaking, to do that same kind of customization in the inspection window itself. Broadly speaking, when we're dealing with FirePro, properties module deals with when our inspections scheduled to happen, and the inspections module deals with anything that is ongoing right now, inspections that have already been started. So when we first go into the inspection list window, Again, we have the ability to have a saved and default searches, and we have inspection list window templates, just like we had in the properties module. So when we deal with inspections specifically, what I personally like to do with inspections is set things up so that the inspections that I see in this window by default are the ones that are open and ongoing that I need to worry about. And I can do that by setting up a saved search that reflects that information. So usually when I want to run a saved search for any open and ongoing inspections, the first thing that I do is I change the this month to date search to all dates, because I'm interested in any inspection that is open currently, as opposed to potentially inspections that might be closed. Then what I like to do is, because primarily with this inspection list window, you're wanting to configure this so that it shows you your ongoing inspections, things that you are working on right now. And for that, we use the Any Inspector search option. So normally I will set this to myself, because your name as an inspector should be showing up in this list. And then what we want to do is use the status function here to find inspections, any inspection that is not currently closed, because closing an inspection indicates I'm done with this. And we can look at that briefly as we go through. But using the not closed status means that it will show you all the inspections that are in any status except closed. So if I hit the magnifying glass here, I'm going to see, ideally, a relatively limited number of inspections on this window. And again, at that point, what I can do is save a new search, call it Evans Inspections. And once I save that, I right-click on this window and say Set Default Search for myself. Setting it up this way will mean that when you come into the inspection list window, FirePro will automatically show you the specific inspections which are currently open and assigned to you right now, which is useful information. Again, I'm going to use this blue arrow button to hide the search parameters so we can talk about the list for inspections in some detail. So there are a number of fields on this window which are important from the context of managing your ongoing inspections. And there's some which we have available, which we don't show by default. So if I right-click again on my column headers here, one of the fields that might be really useful for you to add if you want to is one called reinspection date. This is where, when you are creating an individual inspection, you can flag that inspection needs to be followed up on and put in a specific date on there. So if I put in reinspection date, I can again drag that reinspection date over, resize it. I like to use reinspection date a lot. I can also put in things like the status of the last event on this inspection. I can add things like the owner name if I want to do something like that. The number of reports that I've issued on this inspection or the number of site visits. Again, I can drag these columns around if I want to do that, just to see, set up things exactly the way I might want to see them. And I can adjust width on everything. Once you get this laid out exactly the way you want it, again, you can right-click on this window and select Save as My List Template, or you can use the green plus button and say Evans Inspection Template or something like that. If you want that template that you built to be available to everybody, you can use this little button in the bottom right-hand corner, the eyeball on it, to toggle it from a private template, which is just yours, to a public template, which anybody can use. But in either event, if you set it as the list template, then what will happen there is that when you go into the inspection list window, now I've got it set up so that as soon as I go into that window, I see inspections, any open inspection that's assigned to me, and I see exactly the layout for those inspections that I want. And again, that can include things like inspections sorted by date. Or in this scenario, we might actually want to get even a little more complicated on my sorting. So I could use this button in the lower right-hand corner. It's got a green arrow with 3 little dots, and this lets me build a multi-level sort in here. So I could do something like, I want to sort first by the status of the inspection and then by date, for example. So in that scenario, if I look at a larger range of inspections, I can see these are set to first all my follow-ups appear sorted by date, then all my closed inspections appear sorted by date. This allows me to have a fair bit of flexibility on how I'm displaying my inspection results, exactly how I want to lay those things out. So this green arrow tool on the right lets you build fairly complicated multi-level sorting in addition to the just standard per column sort that you might want to do. So the idea is that this is going to easily and simply display those ongoing inspections that you want to see. Reinspection date can be really useful because it does show you quickly when you're planning, or when you said you would be planning on going back to follow up on those inspections. Now, all of this stuff in the inspection window and the property window is designed to be searchable and easy to find. But it is also possible to do some custom reminder notifications on this. The custom reminders are also created automatically for you, and those all appear in the reminders module for Fire. So if I go into the reminders module, by default, the reminders module shows me any reminder that's created in any module that I have permission to see. So if I have, permissions in the inventory module, I will see inventory reminders. But if we're doing something like inspections, usually what we want to do is set ourselves up a custom reminder search in the inspection side or in the reminder side of things, so I can see that stuff. So we have this reminder type option in the reminders module, and I like to use selected here, and we can start to go down and look at some of the various different inspection related reminders that the software will create automatically. So the first one that we might see in there is our inspection follow-up reminder. If you're in Ontario, you would have an inspection order follow-up option. Actually, Alberta has this as well now. And I might also see, check the periodic inspections reminder. So periodic inspections deals with the regularly scheduled inspections that are attached to properties. So if I use these options, inspection order follow-up, inspections follow-up, and periodic inspections, and filter by that, that's going to give me a list of all the inspections that are related to scheduled or recurring inspections, as well as ongoing inspection notifications. If you want to, you can also filter this search for reminders by specific inspector. Am I the assigned inspector on this property, or is this an inspection that I am currently working on? In either case, we can use the green plus button to create a new inspection and call it like inspection, or a new saved search, call it inspection reminders. And once again, we right click on the blue or on the green and select set default search. So in this scenario, I would now have the reminders module showing me just the inspection searches. Alternatively, if I want to have a more generic search where I see a lot more reminders, I can leave the reminders due search as my default and just switch into the inspection reminder search anytime I want to see any current inspection reminders that I have. So configuring the reminder system to flow just the inspection reminders can also be an effective way to grab all that information that's both in the inspection list window and in the property list window, and set it up in one place. So there's several different ways that you can do those kind of search functions and pull up information related to it. It is also possible, if you want to specifically look for inspections by different reasons or things like that, but normally you'll do that in the context of specific tasks. So when we are looking at inspectors being assigned to specific inspections or inspection activities, there's a number of things that you can customize about your inspector profile as well, which will speed up the process of getting stuff happening in. So almost all of that inspector customization is going to come from the properties module, and it will come from your individual personnel record. So if I pull up my personnel file under employment, there's a tab called officer in here. This determines all the areas that you appear in your officer profile. But there are several useful things that you can do. And the first is you can modify how your name appears. So if rather than deputy chief, you would like to have all your stuff appear as FPO, for example, you can modify that here. Likewise, you can put in an inspection contact phone number, a reply email address, and possibly most importantly, you can add a digital signature for yourself here. Usually the simplest way to do a digital signature is to use something like a screenshot utility. But if you have your signature in a Word document, for example, you can also copy and paste. But I will normally do something like, if I want to grab a digital signature, hit the print screen button. This is pretty standard in all Windows stuff right now. So you'd grab the signature that you wanted, and then you just use the paste function, in this case, Control V, or I can also use the edit paste option up top here and just paste that screenshot that I pulled directly into my digital signature. So now this is set as the digital signature for your user profile. And when you're printing out inspection reports, it'll give you the option of printing your digital signature on those reports that do have a signature configured on them. So setting up a digital signature can be a really helpful way of quickly dumping information in, especially in the context of you wanting to email your inspections directly out of FirePro. That saves a fair bit of time versus printing things off, signing it, and then scanning it or something like that. So digital signature can be a very helpful customization. There is also a fair bit of configuration that we can do as far as the specific reports that we might want to see on here. So the first thing is that we want to remember is that for most inspection reports that we might print out of FirePro, FirePro uses a slightly different report header for inspection reports than it does for standard FirePro printed reports, because we often assume that potentially the inspections might be issued under the municipal header, or you might want to have some slightly different information on them. So you can customize the report header specifically for inspections by going to the File menu in the top left-hand corner and go to the option called Report Page Setup. So under Report Page Setup, we have a Report Header Setup option. This has two tabs on it: Report Header, which sets the generic report headers for FirePro, and Inspection Report Header. So right now, this particular version of the program is flagged to use the exact same report header on there, but I can toggle that off if I want to by going to my inspections customization, and this is going to be off by default for most of you. So you can again go in under report header setup, and we can see we've got an inspection report header option. So this is going to allow me to configure exactly how the inspection header is going to show up on the particular report that we're dealing with. We have the ability to show the fire chief's name on that header. We can show the department phone and fax number. We can show the department logo if we want. We can also have the system use specific station addresses as opposed to the overall department address on this header. That's normally something that we do when we're dealing with like a county or a regional district level FirePro implementation. You also have the ability to adjust our display page numbers, the date and title of the report, if you want to have that on there. So you can adjust margins on that header, and even if you want, you can switch to using a graphic letterhead if you'd prefer to do that. But this tool allows you to customize exactly how the default report headers look when we're printing off those inspection reports. Now, there are some inspection reports, like an inspection order in Ontario, for example, which don't have the same flexibility on there. That's going to mostly be pre-configured for you. But this allows you to tweak the inspection report header considerably. Most of the information that comes onto that inspection report header is managed in the setup menu in the option called system information. This is where you have things like your department name and tagline, your department address, and potentially your department logo or banner. This is a demo version of the system, so it doesn't have any of that set up, but if I wanted to put in a fancy logo, I could do, let's see if we do FP2.ca, for example, I could say print screen logo in there. And just copy that. And again, paste it right into the logo. If I have a logo file, I can just use browse as well, but that's going to allow me to have a department logo that appears on a variety of different things. And I can set it so that the inspection does or does not use department logos. Again, this is all stuff that we can help you set up in your FirePro system. It's just be aware that you have it available so that you know what to ask. Now, when we are talking about your specific FirePro system, there's another area where you can go and do department-specific customizations for yourself. So that's handled under the setup menu in the option called special wording on reports. And there's a variety of different pre-built report wording that you can modify for yourself. So if you're finding that when you print a particular inspection report, it's referencing maybe an older version of the fire code on the boilerplate, or there's some terminology that the legal department wants you to modify on those, you can go in there and change that in this special wording on reports section. So if I go into the inspection report wording, for example, it's going to have a variety of different areas on the form that have standard, what we would call boilerplate on them. So in this case, we can see top of page. This is going to print at the very top of the inspection form. And again, when we say inspection wording, this is an inspection contravention. There is also a checklist function. There's some boilerplate on the orders, but it's a little different. But we can see we've got top of page is going to appear at the very top. Top of form will appear just above the inspection contravention section. Bottom of form will appear underneath the contravention section. Generally speaking, I don't normally recommend putting a signature in these fields because you do have the capability to do digital signatures and other options on the form. And then there's a print if no contraventions option. This is going to print if the inspection has no contraventions on it. In addition to that, under the setup menu and special wordings on reports, we have notice of violation wording, inspection compliance wording. Depending on what modules you have, you might have inspection order wording. Inspection compliance wording is a helpful one because when you generate a compliance report out of FirePro, you can set several different statuses in that compliance report. So you can actually build some standard terminology that you might want to have appear when you select those standard when you set up those standard types of inspection or inspection compliance reports. So these are used in the context of if I have an inspection, say I have done a follow-up here and everything's fine, I can create a compliance report. I can flag it as satisfactory, link it to a previous inspection, and now my customization has given me the option to, I can print my inspector signature if I want to on here. And so it's going to print for me automatically the standard terminology that I put in for that particular status, and my signature appears on there as well. So speeds up the process of generating these reports considerably. And we can see we also have our custom logo attached on there at the top. So these are going to allow you to speed up the process of generating these reports and ensure that the reports work exactly the way you want them to for your department. When we look at the setup menu, there's another area where we can do some customization as well. So if I go into the setup menu under custom settings, I can go to the inspections tab and I can make some changes to how my inspections work at a more fundamental level. So going through these kind of gives us several options. Controlling access to inspections will set it so that most inspections can be toggled between pending and closed. This can be quite helpful if you want to make sure that only specific people have the ability to make changes to inspections. Usually this is tied to what we would call assigned inspector or creator. Assigned inspector is often the default. It's important to remember with inspections that once an inspection has been issued or a large-scale inspection has been closed, those are going to be locked by default. So most users are not going to be able to make changes to those at all, because we work under the assumption that once you have sent a hard copy or once you have closed off an inspection, you probably don't want to make any changes to it. It represents a legal document at that point. So we can also configure on here how we deal with inspection duration. So some departments like to have, if they're tracking time on inspections, they like to have a start and an end time on inspections. Alternatively, duration tends to be a little simpler. You just put in how long this phase of the inspection took, which allows you to identify exactly what your range is. You can also determine if you want to have inspection time information printed on actual inspection reports. Some departments are using that primarily for internal tracking. Some like to display it publicly if they want to. We also have some configurations that allow you to modify how the last inspection date is set. So usually this defaults to what we call inspection close date. So, but it can also be set to inspection date. So the difference there would be if I go in and I do an inspection and I'm toggling this inspection to closed, as soon as I save this, FirePro is automatically going to prompt you to update some scheduling information on the associated property. So that's what this pop-up window is here. Right? So this pop-up window is basically saying, okay, what do you want to do as far as rolling this inspection date forward? And it will pull things like inspection frequency from the property itself, whatever you've set up in advance. But you can decide how you want this last inspection date set. Sometimes departments like to do it based on the date that the inspection started. Sometimes they prefer it based on the date that the inspection was closed. So the difference here would be a year from October 11th or a year from October 26th, depending on how you wanted to configure that. You can also set it so that it happens manually, and that means that you always decide when you're closing off an inspection, how that works. So that customization, again, is controlled in this inspection section under the last inspection date option. We can also set, do we want to use inspection numbers in the system? That's pretty obvious if we want to have individual inspection reference numbers. Now, One really important customization option for inspections that I want to talk about is the option called email issued inspections. So what this does is it sets FirePro so that it will automatically prompt you to email inspections once you set them as having been issued. And this can be a good time saver if your current process is to email the inspections. So what that checkbox does is that when you are working on an inspection and you're working on an individual event, when you flag an issue date for that event, the software will, well, first of all, this is configured so that it sets in a reinspection date. Oh, this one is because I have already put in an issue date. So it's going to ask me at this point, do I want to email this inspection to all the recipients? If I say yes, under this configuration, the software will automatically generate several emails in FirePro with some basic inspection information on it. This is going to set up one for each recipient. Now, in this case, the recipients don't have email addresses, so they're not automatically attached in here, but I could generate an email for them manually, but it will also have the inspection itself attached as a PDF right directly on that record. So in this case, we had multiple recipients, so we see two. If you want to make sure that the recipients are going to get a copy of this thing, you would do that on the main inspection on your contacts by making sure that they have phone email addresses attached to these recipients. So that's going to just prompt you and automatically generate a separate email so that you can send those inspections right away as soon as you flag a specific event as having been issued. Issued is normally what we use to trigger all kinds of information like that. So that configuration setting can be a very useful one as far as making sure that we have some customization. There's also some areas in the properties module where we can do some customization, which is going to be useful from an inspections perspective. So the first one is going to be in the custom field section. There is a reminder customization here. So this is an additional reminder normally that departments use in conjunction with inspections, which can be added to a property that allows you to put in reminder dates, set up a reminder type. And often it was originally designed to be used for an annual fire drill. So I can say this needs to happen every 365 days. And I want to get 3 months, or let's go with 90 days advance notice on it. So once I put in this reminder and its schedule, then I will have on properties an additional fire drill tab, which lets me identify when the last fire drill was, and that will automatically generate a reminder and a notification for when the next scheduled fire drill is for that property. That's going to generate reminders in the reminders module. So I could add that reminder to my scheduled set. In this case, I won't see it yet because it's scheduled for next year. But that's going to allow me to start to see, let's go with next year. Next year, and we'll do. We'll go a little longer on there, probably good. So that's going to ideally allow me this year. It's going to allow me to set up some information on the reminders as well. So that custom reminder can be used for other notifications on it. The other thing that you can customize on these property records is, again, in setup under custom settings, we can go to the properties tab under custom fields, and we have a whole set of what we call inspection checkboxes. So this can be things like vulnerable occupancy. Let's see, sprinklered. And so these checkboxes, once you populate them, appear in the properties record. on the inspections tab. So I could say things like, this is a vulnerable occupancy, or this is a sprinklered property. And then those options become search functions that you can use to locate properties. If you're filtering and say, okay, I want to quickly see all my vulnerable occupancies, I can just say, all dates for inspection, and show me ones that have vulnerable occupancy flag turned on, for example. Those generally are going to also be available as checkboxes if you want to display them. So lots of ability there to start to add new options that you can filter or function into your custom searches. So those are all available options. So yeah, we've covered a fair bit of ground. We've got just about a little bit over 10 minutes left. So this is normally the point in the thing where I throw things open to questions.